about this time last year, I founded a company called Flex Dapps. We are a little services business based out of Melbourne, Australia, and we make like little Web3 apps for people. This is our website. It's pretty funky. You can go and look at all the like little things that we've done and this kind of stuff. So I want to talk today in particular about something called Blocknative Assist, which is a project that we've been working on for a company called Blocknative. They're a really smart bunch of people. We really respect them. They have a lot of traditional product company knowledge that we're taking from them. We're learning a lot from these guys. So they looked at the crypto space. They went to ETH Denver last year, so not the one that was in February, but the one that was in 2018. And built a little dApp. It was a little trading card game, and they play tested it with a bunch of people. And ultimately what they found was the transaction experience just sucked. People hated it. People didn't know how to play the game. They weren't having any fun. So then what they did was they built this sidebar which showed the users what was going on and what transactions they had made and if transactions were in progress and the status in real time and so on and so forth. And what they found was people enjoyed playing the game after that. That little piece of functionality that said, here is what is going on behind the scenes, gave people enough information such that they could focus on actually playing and didn't have to care about how they were playing. So that was pretty interesting. So they decided to turn that into a product. Oh, that's a thing that is common across all dApps. Lots of dApps have transaction statuses, and they need to display that to their users. Hands up if you've ever made a dApp. Yeah? Pretty much everyone. Cool. Hands up if you've tried to solve the transaction status problem where you show statuses of transactions in real time and that kind of thing. Yeah, so three of you, so not everyone who's made a dApp, which is interesting. How many of you have tried to solve like the onboarding problem of like users coming in and onboarding in your dApp with MetaMask? So like different people, yeah? So the people who solved the transaction statuses didn't solve the onboarding problem. It's interesting, right? Like there's a lot of work that we replicate, and there's a lot of work that different people do, even though these things are common across all dApps. So the idea behind Blocknative Assist is it's a little JavaScript library that sits in your dApp, and it handles onboarding people into currently MetaMask, but we're looking to figure out how to improve that in the future and how to add more wallets and so on. And it gives you real-time transaction notifications about what people are doing in your dApp, and those notifications are in plain text. So they're not your transaction 0x blah 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 is pending. They don't take you to Etherscan. They don't give you horrible non-parsable information. You're a human being, so they give you real text. So this is our website. You can go and have a look, a couple of code samples, so on and so forth. The demo isn't particularly good on the website, so what we did instead was we added it to a couple of bigger dApps. We added it to a couple of open source dApps. So here is Maker's CDP portal. Hands up if you've used this dApp, this website. Hands up if you've played around with it. One? Okay. This is like probably one of the most used dApps that exists right now. Got a lot of functionality. It does a lot of cool stuff. Is your access to hashtag DeFi and all that. What happens when we click, we want to log in with a web wallet, and we click MetaMask? Oh, it just takes us to a different fucking website. Sorry, excuse my French. But like, what is this? This is not a good experience. This doesn't, there was no context. I got no context from the app about why I'm doing that. And it's a conscious decision on behalf of the Maker team to do that, right? They didn't, they're smart people, but they decided not to spend the effort explaining to you what MetaMask is inside the dApp. It's too difficult. If we go to the Maker CDP portal with Blocknative installed, we click Web Wallet, it's like, hey, you're going to have to go and get MetaMask. We haven't solved that problem. You still need to do all these things. We think that MetaMask is a pretty decent solution. It's not amazing. I think Marek would have some thoughts on that, I'm sure. But it gives you some context, right? There's a lot of dApps out there right now that use MetaMask, and they will continue to use patterns like this until things like universal logins are really ready for prime time. So let's just go through the flow. Let's just humor ourselves. So it's like, go and get MetaMask. We've just turned it on in extensions. It's going to check that we have MetaMask. It's going to tell us to log in. It's going to guide us through this process. And this is not work that the dApp developer has to do now. They don't have to worry about this. This is just this is like 5 lines of JavaScript. So now we can connect. It's like, check that I'm logged in. And it's like, cool, you're ready to go. You can transact now. If I'm a goon and I decide to like swap networks, whilst the dApp will refresh itself because that's what Maker does, but it will tell you, it's like, hey, you're on the wrong network. Like, you should go and get on the right network, right? We know that you know what you're doing, so we're not going to show you this kind of like stepped workflow because we know that you have MetaMask, so you probably understand what networks are, but you should go and switch. So we switch back to the main net, and it just lets us in again. And the other thing that I mentioned was we have this notion of real-time transaction notifications. So let's say I want to pay back some DAI to my CDP. With a few lines of JavaScript code to wrap the contract calls that are being made in your app, you get real-time notifications. You can specify some plain text, you get a callback, wherein you get a bunch of the transaction data into that callback, so you can use that to create that text string that's shown to a user. So you also get hints. It's like, hey, you haven't confirmed this transaction yet. It might be hiding behind your browser window or something like that. So we hit confirm, and then it's like, hey, cool, you're sending a transaction to pay back some DAI. Now it's paying back DAI. Like, we're just waiting for that to happen. And this keeps users on your website. They don't click a link, they don't go to Etherscan, they don't go and watch some horrible database-looking website to see something get processed. They're now completely contained within your app's experience. And you can customize this, and you can turn it into whatever you like. Currently, you can't change the CSS or anything like that. Actually, no, I think Aaron implemented that this week. So you can now go and muck around with the CSS. You can make these notifications come in at any corner of the screen, so on and so forth. When that confirms, that'll go green. You'll get a little success tick, and it'll say, cool, we paid back your DAI. We added it to Uniswap. So this is Uniswap without Blocknative. It's like, hey, you don't have an Ethereum wallet. Go and please visit us after installing MetaMask on Chrome or Brave. Great. So I just have to go and Google install MetaMask and figure out for myself what that is. And in the case of Blocknative, it's like, hey, you should go and get it. So it's, I don't know, it's pretty cool. It's a tiny little JavaScript library. Highly recommend if you've got dApps and you want to investigate how easy this thing is to implement. I would highly recommend doing it. What it also gives you on the back end, one thing that we get from being able to do all of these things with transactions is we're able to give you data about how people interface with your app. So how far they go through the onboarding process before they decide to drop out, how many transactions they begin but they reject, how many transactions they begin but fail, or they don't have enough ETH for, and so on and so forth. So if you want to analyze the sales funnel that you have within your application, you can do that using Blocknative. You can also run it in what we call headless mode, which is where you have no UI. So if you just want to collect data, you can do that too. Yeah, I know, pretty neat. So that's pretty much Blocknative. There's not really more to it. There's a couple of ways that we're thinking of going with the product. One of them is around this notion of multiple different wallet providers. At the moment, if you go to a lot of dApps, this CDP portal included, you get a bunch of different ways to log into the app, right? MetaMask, Ledger, Trezor. You could be on Trust Wallet, you could be on Status, you could be on Coinbase Wallet, you could be in any one of these different providers. Wallets are really easy to make. I can't remember who it was that made that point earlier, but yeah, they're very easy to fork and create. So there's, as a developer, it's a real pain having to deal with the onboarding process for each one of those different types of wallets. But and the only thing you really care about is having an instantiated Web3 object that you can use to make transactions. All you care about is that your user is ready to transact within your dApp. And that is a layer that can be abstracted, right? You can pull all of that complexity away. You can have one company or product or service that does the onboarding for each one of those different applications, and then just gives you as a developer the correct object that you need, the correct instantiated object, maybe a bit of provider-specific meta information about the user, so that you can just go and make transactions. Pretty cool. But we're not sure if we'll actually do that yet. Still getting validation. But yeah, I don't know. That's Blocknative. Does anyone have any questions about that?
Have you thought about building your wallet?
Nope. Because that is not the kind of complexity I want in my life.
You talked to like MetaMask about maybe shipping this as kind of their code base?
Yeah, so we actually did have a call with the MetaMask team a few weeks ago. Showed them the code, how we do everything, so on and so forth. I don't know how any business relationship would work between Blocknative and MetaMask. Like, I just don't know how MetaMask interface with other teams, or if they do. Or whether they would just want to absorb the code base and be like, no, we're going to fork what you've done because it's open source and put it in our code base and just release it too. So, I mean, either of those things would be okay, I guess. But ideally, you don't want to just encourage another wallet provider to take your work. But yeah, building wallets is hard, and I don't want to do it. Yep.
That looks totally awesome. And what I love about it is it solves this problem that is on my to-do list. Is just kind of here, where this is the point where I'd actually do it, and this is the point where I kind of really want it, but it's just that little bit too low. But it's just that little bit of JavaScript. I love it. The related pain point I've got is that I lose the content. I have a little bit of stuff for unconfirmed transactions I kind of handle. Right. But I lose the content when you close the browser.
Yes. Oh.
Is that something? So what I should do is put stuff in storage. Out what's just happened. Is that something that you handle or considering handling?
Well, let's test Aaron's code, shall we? So that's a great point. I'm really glad that you brought that up. You would generally lose transaction state if you close the browser, yes. So let's confirm this transaction, and then let's Command Q, goodbye Brave, and then let's bring it back again, and let's see how we do. Come on. Uh-oh. Oh. Oh, that's a little glitch. All right, this isn't hashtag live demos, right? So I'm pretty sure that there is code written to reinitialize that alert. It's clearly not working right now.
Okay.
But yes, we have thought about that, and we do have some code to reinitialize the alert, yeah. There's also one of the things that I can maybe show you as well. All these things are on mainnet, by the way, because real dApp developers demo on mainnet. So let's buy some Maker token, a non-shit coin, not financial advice, and confirm this transaction. And then let's press it again. Let's do it again. How much did we just buy? The same thing. Okay, well, our first transaction completed too quickly. What I really wanted to show you there, and maybe I can do it by changing the gas price, is that the little assist library will actually pick up. Yeah, did you see that? It kind of disappeared really quickly. That's Aaron's fault. But what it did is it picked up the fact that this is a transaction with exactly the same data as the previous transaction. So if your dApp is not responsive enough, oftentimes you'll find that people click the same button over and over again, and they make the same transaction over and over again, which is less than ideal. So within assist, we detect whether two sequential transactions are the same, and we provide a little toaster alert that says, hey, that might be a duplicate. But it didn't work right then. Yeah. Any more questions? Yep.
Likely it would be your responsibility anyway, but I've seen MetaMask power users struggling with a MetaMask window hidden somewhere, and
right.
you're not realizing that it's hidden where you windows popping up and then disappearing again. So actually, I would like to have the opportunity to have the MetaMask window just in the browser on a side panel like bookmarks or history, so
Right.
that you can constantly see what's going on and it's constantly visible. That would be quite helpful.
Yeah, that's interesting. So the, as I mentioned, let's see if I can find the blog post. It's probably easier to find on Medium. I don't know if I'm going to find this. But as I mentioned, the first, yeah, I'm probably not going to find it right now. But the first iteration of this product, the things that the guys built post ETH Denver after they did a bunch of user testing, was a sidebar that had all that persistence and that transaction information. And that was what they found was really performant. And that was one of the first ideas we had coming into building Assist, was maybe we should build that sidebar that has persistence and history. One of the reasons we haven't is it's really complex. There's a lot of hidden building that shows you all of your previous actions. You have to persist some state in the name, like the plain text names that you've given them, such that if you come back to a dApp after closing the window, you have that history again. That's kind of tricky to do without just storing it all in browser state, which is not necessarily a bad idea, but wouldn't translate cross wallet. So yeah, it's interesting. Like I think you're right. I think persistence is a really component of UX, especially when you're dealing with something like blockchain, which, you know, one of the propositions of blockchain is persistence, right? So it makes a lot of sense, and it's something that we would like to add, but we're not sure exactly where it goes in the priority list at the moment. Yeah. Any more questions? Cool. Does anyone want to see a dApp we made on Plasma for the EdCon hackathon? Yeah. You want to see it? Have you seen it? Okay. So this week for the EdCon hack, we made Twitch Plays Pokemon on Plasma, which is currently running on a machine back in Melbourne. This is Pokemon Red, and you can play by just typing in Twitch chat. So we can send a message up, and if we wait a couple seconds, he'll turn and face the ceiling. And each command that we're typing in here is being listened to by a server that's Twitch chat, turning them into a transaction on Loom Network's Plasma test network. And then there's a game server, which is the machine that's sat in Melbourne, listening to all of those contract events which are fired on the Loom Plasma chain and turning them into game inputs. And the whole purpose of this is to reward people when the game is ended. So currently there's 1.1 ETH in the pool. I actually had a really interesting conversation with Virgil Griffith of the Ethereum Foundation the other day. He's maybe going to give us some money to put in the prize pool on behalf of the EF, which would be really cool. And it's an experiment in how people self-organize and how differently they potentially self-organize when there's an incentive at play. There's a lot of these weird governance experiments occurring right now within the Web3 ecosystem with things like Maker and Aragon, and Polkadot and Substrate will come about pretty soon, wherein you have incentives to govern things effectively, but does that actually worsen your ability to govern? Twitch Plays Pokemon, when it first came out in like 2014, was a really unintentionally successful experiment. On average, there were 80,000 people watching the stream at any one time over the 16 days that it went on, and 10% of those people actually participated and sent commands to the game. Twitch thinks that like 1.12 million, Twitch reckons that 1.12 million people played the game, like sent inputs to the game, which is really hectic. And so but there was no incentive, right? They just played because it was fun. They wanted to be part of something. But if you stick money in a prize pool, Do people get better? Do they get worse? This particular flavor of the experiment is let's just reward people when the game ends based on the proportion of inputs that they send to the game. So you have an incentive if you want to win the whole pot to actually delay the game for a really long time until you realize that you have to finish it to get any of the money at all. So does that, like, how high does the incentive have to be for that to kick in? And is that reproducible? Is that boundary fuzzy? Is it a hard boundary? Like, all these different types of questions are things that you can ask this type of system. Yeah, go ahead.
What Loom test network did you put on? Like, is it like is it an actual plasma chain, the general smart contracts? Or
Yep.
Okay, so you just like deploy it to the chain.
Yes.
And it's a plasma chain.
Yes. Apparently, that's Loom said it is.
Okay. Are we sure about this?
Well, it is on chain. So all these things are on chain. They do have a block explorer that you can go and look at.
So I do know they did like a DPoS.
Yeah.
But I wasn't aware they'd done a general.
It might be that. Let me, so this is, don't video this. You're about to see a private key that is not, yeah, extdev plasma. So it might not be plasma, but they've put plasma in the URL. So that would be cheeky if they'd done that, yeah. But it's a good question. I don't actually know. I just know that they have a block explorer and transactions go through pretty instantaneously. Like if you watch, if we connect via TeamViewer, do I know this password? Yeah, here we go. So this is the game. This is the little machine that's running it down in Melbourne. If we, hold on a minute. If we send a message and then watch how quickly the transaction comes through over here, it's pretty quick. It's pretty.
Is that to your node and then you send that to the network?
So the chat message gets listened to by a server. That server broadcasts the transaction, and the transaction is then listened to by this game server.
But can we just see a transaction created?
Yes.
Or
Confirmed.
confirmed?
Yes.
In a block?
Yep.
That's a pretty fast block.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So we wanted to get it on the Loom mainnet, but they have to manually vet and validate all of the contracts that get deployed on the Loom mainnet for some reason. So we're talking with them and being like, hey, push it, get us on mainnet, because there's only like 5 or 6 applications deployed on Loom mainnet at the moment.
Yeah, maybe it's due to some limitations with like not having completely generalized contracts.
Maybe.
To the point where like they need to make sure that in your case they can settle it properly.
Right.
So it has real value or something.
Yeah, I don't know. It would make no sense if they had a testnet that would do generalized smart contracts, but not a mainnet that would do one. Yeah, possibly. I know that like a lot of the Plasma Group chain, like the Omise Go SDK, doesn't do any generalized contracts. You can't even do transaction data on their Plasma chain apparently. Right.